Now that we know about two-dimensional arrays and how to create them, we are going to jump into actually traversing them. This is an interesting thing. Now, we've kind of seen stuff like this before, and we've used nested for loops, but nested for loops are really going to be our primary tool here for actually being able to go through items in a two-dimensional array. So we're going to learn how to do this by we're going to make a couple methods to start off with so we can write some interesting things later. I'm going to write two methods. I'm going to write a method that will, given a two-dimensional array, print it out for me. And then I'm going to write another one that kind of fills in. Two-dimensional arrays are kind of tedious to fill in. So I'm going to write a function that allows me to just fill in all the items. So here's what we're going to do. Let's start with the fill one. I'm going to make a new method. It's called public static. It's going to return a double. I'm just going to work with integer two-dimensional arrays. I have a really bad habit of calling them double arrays, which is obviously not good because double arrays are something else. Two-dimensional arrays. I'm going to do my best to not screw that up. Public static integer two-dimensional array is what I'm returning. I'm going to just call this fill array, and it's going to take in two items. It's going to take in the number of rows that I want, and it's going to take in the number of columns that I want. So here's what I'll do. So I'll just start by creating an integer two-dimensional array. So integer two-dimensional array. I'm just going to call it temp. It's going to be a new one. And I am going to create it with rows for the first set, and then columns for the second. There we go. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to traverse through each item in this two-dimensional array and fill it with a random integer, right? So I need two for loops here. So for loop number one is going to be my outer for loop. It is going to go through the larger sections of my array. In other words, my rows. It's going to look at each row one at a time, and then my inner for loop will look at each item within the row. So what I'm going to have is integer I equals 0. I is less than, okay, so I want to look at each row. So I need to look at each row in my array here one at a time. And so I want to start at 0, and I want to go up until the end of how many rows I have. So in this word, I could just use row, don't get me wrong. But what I want to do is get used to using temp.length here, right? Because temp itself is an array of integer arrays. And so if I look at each item within that array of integer arrays, I will end up looking at each row. So that's what I'm going to start off with, I++. Okay. And now I need to figure out what to increment over on the end side. So I need to use a different variable here. I'm going to go with j. And while j is less than, okay, so here's the big question. So j is less than what? Well, in each row, how many items are there? Now we know there's column items worth, but I don't want to use column here. I could, but I don't want to. I want to get used to something else. So how many items are there in one of my actual rows? Well, here's the thing, is that, the first time I'm going to look at temp at 0 is referencing an integer array. And so temp at 0 is the name of an integer array. And so I can get its length. Temp at 0 dot length is going to get me the length of one of those rows. In other words, how many columns do I have? And then I'm just going to increment j++. All right. Oops. Geez. I screwed it up. Okay. So I'm just going to, for each item in there, make it a new random value. So I'm going to go with temp at I at j is equal to, okay, I'm going to make a random integer. I'm going to do something that is going to seem like it's not going to make sense exactly. I'm going to have numbers between, I want numbers in between 10 and 99. Here's why. When I go to print these out, I want them all to be 2 digits, so just so it looks nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take math.random times, so multiply by, we're going with 90, and we're going to cast that to an integer. Cast that to an integer. And so what this is going to return right now is each of these will be a random number in between 0 and 89. And I'm just going to add 10 to it. So now I get random numbers in between 10 and 99, which is nice. Okay, so this is just going to go through every item and it's going to fill it. Now I can't actually check that until I have some way of printing this out. So that's part 2. So public static integer. And actually it's going to return nothing. Actually, no, it's going to return a string. That's what we want. It's going to return a string. Public static string. And this is going to be print array. It's going to take in my array. So it's going to take in my 2-dimensional array. Call it temp again. And I'm just going to cheat here and copy this all down because nested for loops are kind of a pain to type out all the time. So here it is. I'm just going to get rid of this part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new string that's just going to kind of aggregate together all my values. So this is going to be, I don't know, result equals, and it's going to have nothing in it to start off with. And what I'm going to do is for each item in here, I am going to add it to result. So plus equals. I'm going to take temp at I, j, and then I'm just going to add a space. So there's a space in between everything. Perfect. And then what I want to do is that, so this will add up all the things in a row, make a big string out of them. And then at the end of my string, I want to start a new line. So at the end of this for loop, so this gets all the way through my row, my first row. And so at the end of that for loop, I just want to add a new line. Perfect. So then when I come back around and I increment I to be 1, then I'm looking at the next row and I add them all on, concatenate them all on, and I make a new line. Perfect. All right, let's test both of these things out. So these are just basic 2-dimensional array methods where I'm just going through every single item, doing something with it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, let's see, make a new 2-dimensional array, call it my array. And it's going to be equal to, we're going to use the fill array method, which takes in a row and a column. I'm going to make this, I don't know, 6 by 10, let's say. Perfect. That sounds great. And then I'm just going to print this out. So print array. That's not what I want. I want system.out.println. And then I'll put in here print array. And what am I going to give it? I'm going to give it my array. Marvelous. Okay. Let's go and try this out. Java compile. Traversing 2-dimensional arrays. Oh, darn. Oh, I'm missing a return statement. Golly gee, that's embarrassing. I need this right here. Return result. Perfect. Hopefully that was my only issue. Did I return something in the other one as well? I don't think I did I? Oh, that's embarrassing. I forgot them both. All right, return temp done. Marvelous. Java traversing 2-dimensional arrays. Wonderful. All right, so I randomly generate numbers in between 10 and 99, and I print them out in a nice little box. Okay, cool. So let's do something interesting. We're going to do 2 things. I am going to make 2 different methods. Both of them are going to return integer arrays. And what they're going to do is one of them is going to get me the sum of each of the rows, and the other one's going to get me the sum of each of the columns. And the reason we're going to do that is just so we can practice our row order traversals and our column order traversals. So I'll make a new method then. This is going to be embarrassing because I don't have a way of printing out. It's fine. It's okay. So I'm going to do this. So this is public static. It's going to return an integer array. Integer array, not an integer 2-dimensional array, just a regular one. And this is going to be row sum. And what's going to take in is an integer 2-dimensional array called temp. Okay. So let's do this. I think this won't be too bad. Let's go ahead and again, because I'm lazy, I'm gonna copy over my return this time because so I don't screw it up. Actually, just give me the whole thing. I'm gonna just change it all. Okay. So I mean, there's gonna be some really obvious similarities here. The first line is I want to create something to actually collect my stuff in. So in this case, it's going to be an integer array, and it's going to be called row sums. Perfect. Equals, and then this is going to be a new integer array that has the size of, well, how many rows are there? How many rows are there? Well, what it's going to be is temp dot. All right, is it going to be temp at 0 dot length, or just going to be temp dot length? How many rows I have? Well, it's going to be temp dot length and not temp at 0, because temp at 0 dot length tells me how many items are in each row, but I just want how many rows there are. So temp dot length is what I want. Perfect. And then we're going to go through and add all these things up. So let's see. How am I going to do this? I'm still going to traverse through these all the same way. Have I equals 0, temp dot length, j, temp at 0 dot length. I just want to add each item in here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say row sums at. Okay, what do I want? Do I want I or do I want j here? Well, I'm looking at each row. Which one determines my rows? Is it I or j? And the answer is I. So it will get the value. Actually, it'll be added to the value of whatever's at temp at. What row am I currently on? I. And then the element, j. Okay, perfect. And then I want to get rid of this because that's no longer of any use to me. And then I will return my row sums. All right, so this is what we call a row order traversal. I am looking at each item by row, and in this case, adding them all up. Okay. So let's see. I think I have everything I want. I don't think I screwed anything up. Fingers crossed. We'll find out. These are fine. We'll leave them. I just need to call my method. So I need a new integer array, and it'll just be called sum of what am I doing? Sum of rows. Okay, and it'll be equal to row sum of my array. Marvelous. And then should I write a method really quick? I've got print array 2D, print array 2D, and I'll make another print array method really quick here because I'm going to use it once. I think I'm saving time. I don't know. Static. It's going to return a string, and it's going to be called print array 1D. It's going to take in my integer array. Ah, Joseph. See, I could have just... see, that was a mistake. I could have just written the same. I could have had the same name. And just it would take in a different... well. Actually, no. We're going to do this. We're going to overload it. See, I should... That was just bad. That was just bad programming mistake on my part. Okay. Because it'll know. It'll be great. Print array... we'll call this temp. Fantastic. And this is going to be for integer I equals 0. I is less than temp dot length I plus plus. Right? We are going to do this. We are going to just make it so I need that string again to collect everything. So this is a string, which is the result. It'll get nothing to start off with. Perfect. And then we will just add each item to it. Result plus equals, and this will be temp at I. Whew, okay. And I need to return it. Can't forget that. Return result. Okay, cool. I'm going to Control C. Actually, let's do this. I'm just going to print a new line in here so there's a gap. Marvelous. And then, so I got my row sum. And now I just need to system out.print line. And what am I going to print out? I'm going to print out sum of rows. Okay. Fingers crossed. I feel like I've done a lot of things here. And who knows if they're all going to work out. Oh, geez. Okay. Print. Golly, where did I write print? Public. Sometimes I feel like I'm rushing too much. It's okay. Ha! Whoa, what did I do wrong? Okay, result. Temp. Result equals. Okay. What did I? Oh, I just did sum of rows. Golly. I want print array. I guess that's better. I thought I made a big error in the actual function itself. I just didn't use the print one. Okay. Third or fourth time's the charm. Wonderful. Oh, I didn't put a space in between everything. That also doesn't seem right. Or maybe it does. I need a space in between each item. I feel like if nothing else, we're getting a really strong lesson here in troubleshooting our code. Okay. Fourth time's the charm. Fifth time. Okay, there we go. And I should be able to check to see if I added all these numbers up. 612, 14 plus 95, 79. Yeah, it comes out to 612. I don't know. I hope it does. So this is the sum of each row. Perfect. Okay. Now, the question is, how do we rewrite this function so that it returns the sum of the columns instead? So I'm going to copy this, and I want to make as few changes as possible and see what happens here. So I'm going to change this. Okay, so this is now going to be column sum. Column sum. Still takes in that. That's fantastic. We'll call this column sums. That's fine. Okay, so how many columns are there? It's no longer temp.length, right? So assuming this is a nice rectangular array, two-dimensional array, it's not going to have temp.length number of columns. Instead, we're going the other direction. And so just like before, when I was going through, temp.0 tells me how many, or temp at 0 tells me how many things are in each row, otherwise known as how many columns. So I can change this to be temp0.length. Okay, so that's going to give me the right number of columns. So now the question is, what is to be done here? So I think the maybe naive thing, or maybe the first thing that will come to your mind, I shouldn't say naive, that makes it sound bad, but maybe the first thing that comes to your mind is that, hey, I just need to switch J and I, right? Here's the issue. While this is a good idea, the issue is that I'm not going up against the right values. I is still going over the number of rows. I've just put in the column spot. And J is still going over the number of columns. I've just put in the row spot. So I'm going to actually leave these alone. And the one change that I'm going to make is I'm going to swap my 2 for statements. 4. All right. So here's what's going to happen. Oh, this needs to be called column sums. Column sums. So here's what's going to happen. Now, what I'm starting with is I'm saying J equals 0. So I'm holding J constant to start off with, and then looking at each new item, I, which is in the length of temps, right? So now this item is being held constant while I change what I is each time. So I'm going down through each row in a specific column. And then after I'm done with that, then I increment the column that I'm looking at. And then I go through each item in the row again. And so this is what we call a column order traversal. Again, it's important to note here, this does not change how my two-dimensional array is actually structured. It just changes the order in which I'm going through the items. This is still a two-dimensional array where it's an array of arrays. That has not changed. And in our original drawing that we had of this, I still have a array of integer arrays where each of those integer arrays is a row. It's just now I've swapped that I'm going to increment through each column and then through each row. And so now if I just return column sums, I think I should be good. So I just need to call these things then. So if I just copy this. Actually, I should copy this. I want that as well. Control C, Control V. Okay, I want that. I want this to be, no, I still want that to be sum of columns. And this is going to be column sum. And this is going to be sum of columns. Oh, okay. I think that's everything I want. Let's go find out. See, this would be a miraculous thing. I knew it was to sum of columns. Sum of columns is like column. Okay. If that's my only one, come on. Yeah. Oh, shoot. What did I do wrong? Okay. That's okay. We're troubleshooting here. So, I still added up all the columns. How did I do that? Column sums. It's the length. This is how many columns I have. I went through J. Oh, Joseph. Here it is. I didn't change this. So what I'm looking at each time is I don't want to add this to the thing at I. I want to add this to the thing at J. Okay, that's better. That's better. Fingers crossed. One more time. Whew. Okay, good. Yeah, so now this is all my columns. Each of them added up. And yeah, so this is what is called a column order traversal. So let's sum up what we've done here really quick. The first two things that we wrote were not too bad, where we were just traversing through every single item in my two-dimensional array. The way we do that is we use nested for loops. We have to use two different items to traverse over, I and J, where I is traversing over the rows, which is the length of my array of arrays, and then J, which is going through each of the individual columns, which is going through from 0 to the length of one of those integer arrays. And so I can print out each item or add an item or whatever it is. And then the one big difference I had here for when I found my row sum versus my column sum was one was a row order traversal. So I was looking at everything in a single row at one time. And I have my column order traversal where I was looking at everything in one column at a single time. So that's how I traverse through two-dimensional arrays. It's very similar, obviously, to what we did with one-dimensional arrays. It's just now we're nesting these for loops to be able to look at all the items there. So this will be super useful to us. And again, super important for the AP exam, especially for the free response portion.